I'm Melissa Watley. I'm a tax attorney here with my colleague, Peter, who specializes in helping business owners get their refunds from the employee retention credit and get it from the government. I'm normally on the not fine side of tax controversy, where I'm helping people that have a balance due or owe the government money. And on the flip side, you do that work as well. But you're really getting to help people recover funds that they are legally entitled to due to the COVID relief bills. So I just want to talk to you about what you're seeing in that space in general. We know many people have been waiting a very long time for these claims. And so can you give me a little bit of background about what you're seeing in this space right now?
Sure. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of what the former commissioner said was going to happen. And some of these claims are being paid. The government has determined that they're eligible. But on the flip side, you're seeing disallowances. And in many, many cases, those disallowances are incorrect. And so, what that is setting off is just what you described, typical traditional tax controversy work. And so everything has sort of come full circle where, yes, we were out trying to help people obtain these COVID relief funds. Well, now we're trying to help people preserve their entitlement to it, their claim to it.
So I think the frustrating thing that we've all realized with these refund denial letters is a lot of people don't understand how refund claims work, how to fight back against the federal government, and what steps they need to take. And so what we're seeing, I guess, is a lot of letters that are pretty general, right? They're not from a specific person per se. They're just blanket denials. Denials are not necessarily specific. You say they're wrong. They're wrong because what? The government doesn't have full, complete data to actually make a determination, right?
Sure. And that's been a very frustrating thing. The government is not wrong to scrutinize some of these claims, but they're doing it with imperfect information. And the result is that the taxpayers left in a situation where they've received a disallowance, so a 1C or a 106C letter, and the requirement there is to protest, to say, no, I disagree with this determination, government, that you've made, and I would like an opportunity to speak to someone in appeals. And there are tens of thousands of similarly situated taxpayers who are dealing with this experience right now.
Yeah. So I think a good thing is, yes, you can file a protest. And when we mean protest, we're not talking about marching out in the streets with signs. We're talking about filing a written protest, which obviously our firm helps people do. But I think there is a misconception that filing a protest will protect your claim. So can you talk a little bit about the difference in filing a protest and actually preserving your claim?
Yeah. I mean, so when you're dealing with tax law, you always want to understand what the sort of authority is for something happening. Filing a protest, appealing something, is a continuation of a process and a conversation with the government about the sufficiency of what you filed. And it's administrative, and you are continuing to work with the agency. There exists code and other rules that start operating once a disallowance happens, one of which is a 2-year rule, in that a taxpayer has 2 years after a disallowance to file a lawsuit in a district court or the Court of Federal Claims. There is another part of the law that says if that 2 years expires, no matter for what reason, the government cannot pay that refund. And taxpayers who otherwise think that they're doing it right, they received a letter from the government disallowing a claim. In response to that, they filed the written protest, and they're waiting because there are staffing shortages. There are a lot of people in line. That 2-year period could expire. And these folks who did what they were supposed to do, they established their eligibility, they filed refund claims, and they kept people employed during the pandemic, maybe in a situation 5 to 6 years after the fact that the government couldn't pay their refund claim.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing about tax for everyday American business owners and taxpayers in general is there's all these nuanced rules and regulations. There's statutes for collection, for assessment, for taking action against the federal government, for filing a refund claim. And it's just so nuanced that most people are not aware of all these deadlines, and they're kind of stuck because once they realize them, maybe they've lost their rights. Do you think the government is banking on the fact that most people don't know these time rules and are not going to exercise their rights? And so is the play to blanket deny people with imperfect information and then hoping that nobody will realize that they have to file a federal refund claim and therefore they've solved this problem of paying people the money that they're owed?
Well, I hope that's not the case. Certainly, the taxpayer advocate has included legislative proposals and fixes to limit the application of this 2-year trap. I hope that the IRS wouldn't do something like that, but you have to sort of ask yourself, especially as we sit here during a government shutdown, is there anyone paying attention to this stuff? There certainly is a remedy here, and that is to ask the IRS to agree to an extension. And that is something that can happen in these cases. It's a Form 907. But again, during a government shutdown, they're not processing Forms 907. And how early might you want to start to work with the government to get it signed? Because it is not a frontline employee who has the authority to countersign one of these agreements to extend a statute of limitation.
So there is a way to get the government to agree to extend the time for filing a refund claim, right, in federal district court or federal claims court. And you mentioned that was a Form 907, and that can't be signed by a frontline worker. So, like, what's the process of actually getting that statute extension? Is it something you send in and then you wait to get assigned to somebody?
So in an ideal world, you've been working with appeals or they've at least acknowledged your case. You could try to work with someone in that part of the IRS, the Independent Office of Appeals. Alternatively, what we are seeing a lot of taxpayers have to do is reach out to the Taxpayer Advocate Service for assistance to go and find that person and explain what needs to be done and why they're doing it and get an agreement, because it's not good enough that you have sent the 907 to the IRS to say, please sign it. You actually need to have it countersigned by the date that that expires. And again, it's 2 years from the mailing of that disallowance.
Yeah. So I think that's really frustrating, I think, for everyday American business owners is the fact that there's so many things in tax that are not a one-way street where it requires the government to participate and respond in some manner. That's like seeing S Corp elections made, right? And not getting a response. Similar things like that. We've seen a lot of business owners struggling with just election issues where, they send something in and it gets behind. During the last shutdown, we had 35 days under the same administration where we had 5 million pieces of mail rack ups. Any day, I think because we deal with the IRS and you and I know this, but people that don't deal with the IRS on a regular basis are like, what do you mean it takes a month or 2 months or a year? And just, yeah, it's a slow process. So if we're not able to get that statute extension and we're not able to get them to agree to that, and that's kind of a risky way to go, if you're coming up on a deadline, the other option is obviously filing suit. So you want to talk about that because I know you do a lot of that.
Sure. Yeah. And that's something that our firm has done is work with these business owners who are in need of the funds, have been waiting for years and years for this, is that they'll file a refund claim lawsuit directly against the government. The requirement there is simply that you have made a refund claim and waited at least 6 months. At this point, everyone's been waiting at least 6 months, or you can do it after the disallowance letter is received. But many taxpayers are choosing that option. We're talking more than 100 cases, probably nationwide, that are pursuing this option.
So I would say, obviously, as a lawyer, I like to be upfront and transparent with people. I think a lot of people are frustrated because, like, I spent money to probably get this claim filed. The government's refusing to give me the money. And now I got to pay a lawyer to go fight and get the money, right? And that's everything with tax. People are always frustrated by tax because obviously having to pay legal fees. And so what we're trying to do, I think, as a firm and at Frost Law is also provide people, the informational and educational content so they know their rights, they know the deadlines, they know what the process is. But also we're working on building this pro bono, low bono referral network because fighting the federal government is super expensive. I think you want to talk a little bit about like the cost of fighting the federal government and why, we're trying to create this educational, informational,
Yeah.
push to people. And this, what we're trying to do here.
Sure. So it's not nothing to go and file a lawsuit against the government in a federal district court or, again, the Court of Federal Claims. It's big boy litigation. It is, serious conversation with the government about funds that are owed, and they are going to evaluate your claims and make sure that they're sufficient. And that takes hours and it takes attorney's time. In these cases, can take CPA or enrolled agent time. So there's a team that will go to bat for you. For larger cases, meaning larger dollar amounts that are out there to be obtained and recovered for clients, that can make a lot of sense. When you are dealing with taxpayers who claim smaller amounts, that may not make a whole lot of sense. And attorneys are always trying to evaluate whether or not we're providing value in cases. And if we don't feel like we're providing value, we may not be able to take a case. But working with a pro bono or low bono community of other attorneys who, one, want to see these taxpayers get the resources that their Congress promised them during a pandemic. Again, they did the things to be eligible. They paid the qualified wages. They're entitled to these credits. We want to see that happen for people. And, I have a background teaching at the University of Maryland Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. I know you have a background with low income taxpayer clinics as well. But then also just folks who want to get experience in district court litigation. Tax has its own court, the United States Tax Court. And for many attorneys, that is the venue that they'll go to. It works a little bit differently with employment taxes and with the employee retention credit. And so this is a great opportunity for those attorneys to get experience in that venue.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I always struggle so much. It feels like the people in the middle are always left behind, whether we're talking about personal income tax or small business owners. People are not destitute enough to qualify for free legal services, but then sometimes their claim is too small or their issue is not large enough to really hire a firm. And there's just all these people that are stuck in the middle without resources and representation. And tax is not supposed to be that way. We're not supposed to have tiers of justice or tiers of due process or, access to legal representation based on, how big or small your claim is and whether or not you get to exercise your rights. I think that's the hard thing about tax. It's just so complicated. The system is meant for people to be able to do it themselves, but we all know that they can't. So I think creating this website, getting out the information, making sure people know their rights, how to exercise their rights, and then us working on creating this huge network, hopefully of pro bono and low bono attorneys that can help these small business owners rise up against the machine and claim what they're legally entitled to. Because the smaller you are, the more you are impacted. And that's always the part that really bothered me. So it means more sometimes to a smaller business than it does to a large business. So I think what we're doing here is really great.
We're on our 7th commissioner. We're down 20,000 IRS employees and the government is shut down. That feels like a high hurdle when you're asking to get a form signed to extend a statute. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like they were already struggling. They've been hit so many times as an institution, right? Like they've been taking hits for, I don't know, past 10, 15, 20 years even, right? Budget issues, staffing issues, training issues. I mean, the hits just keep coming and the laws keep getting more complex.
And if this thing goes on, we were at 35 days during the 2018, 2019 shutdown. We had clients who, they had their passports suspended and needed to travel. And now you've got 2 different departments in Treasury and in state trying to coordinate efforts and to get folks where they need to travel overseas and get their passports and their documents. And, this 907 is going to be no easy task. These disallowances started going out in June of 2024. So you're 16 months in. That last 8 months is going to be fly by. And we certainly think that folks need to be starting, at least 6 months to get these forms signed.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, you got to get the right person to sign. So it's like appeals is already behind. And I think the sad thing too is in a government shutdown, the morale goes down for federal workers. People don't think, a lot of people aren't getting paid to do the jobs they're supposed to do. They might be permanently terminated from their job. I've seen a lot of news that this might be an opportunity to actually trim the federal government down and a lot of the institutions. So I just feel like the morale is bad. And it's like we're all stuck. The taxpayers and the federal workers are all stuck in the system and none of us have control except for the people at the top. And that's a frustrating place to be in. I mean, I had people getting levied during the 2018 shutdown, getting their paychecks taken, and there's no one there to release those levies. So on that note, I mean, the government is open for a few more days. Specifically, the IRS is open. I believe it was 5 days. We're on day 2 of that. So I think it's imperative if you have a deadline or if you have an issue like a wage garnishment, a bank levy, any kind of letter deadline, filing your tax return by the extension. I think now is a good opportunity to make sure in the next 5 days that you get anything done that has a deadline. Because I don't think it's going to be sufficient to say, and people get frustrated by this, that, oh, the government shut down, so I didn't file, or, my return got rejected. So I was going to wait until they opened back up and I figured out why it got rejected. Unfortunately, the government doesn't hold taxpayers to the same standard, I feel like. So We will see. To our next meeting.